Every couple experiences ups and downs over the years. Life's roller coasters, if you will. But in our case, my husband Stephen and I had managed to sail through 40 years without any major turbulence. Or so I thought. Little did I know there was an unexpected stop waiting for us on this ride. Out of the blue, Stephen asked for a divorce. When he broke the news, he was holding a big bouquet of flowers. That day was his 65th birthday and his last day at work, having just retired. The bouquet, a gift from his colleagues, was a luxurious mix of calm colors, oranges, pale yellows, light blues, and whites. Seeing it, I couldn't help but think, wow, that looks expensive, like $200 to $300? Leave it to me to think about the cost at a moment like this. Stephen, grinning, handed me the bouquet and said,
Abigail, thanks for everything so far.
I was a bit embarrassed. You see, Stephen had never given me flowers before. He's the kind of guy who thinks,
why waste money on something you can't eat?
His idea of celebrating something was usually eating something more extravagant than usual. When we were first dating, and I asked what he wanted for his birthday, he said,
all-you-can-eat steak.
Moreover, he's not the type to give gifts just to make someone happy. I had never even received a birthday gift from him, let alone flowers. So, when he gave me that bouquet on his retirement day, it was certainly surprising. Though he didn't buy them and probably thought inside,
I don't need these flowers.
I was still touched. Stop being so formal. You've worked hard all these years, Stephen. Now, take it easy and do what you love, I said as I took the bouquet. That's when Stephen's expression changed, and he said,
thanks for the housekeeping. We're done. I want a divorce.
Stephen and I were high school classmates, and we started dating in our sophomore year. We broke up and got back together a few times, finally getting married on my 25th birthday. More than romantic feelings, we got married because we were like opposite-sex buddies who had fun together. We had 2 kids, but our parents were so eager to help with them that we never felt overwhelmed by parenting. Work, play, time with each other, time with separate groups of friends, we enjoyed it all. This, I guess, is why we avoided the usual marital issues. Except for that one time Stephen cheated on me in his 40s. I found out long after they had broken up, discovering pictures of them looking cozy on a company trip. It was a shock, even for a laid-back couple like us. When confronted, Stephen admitted it easily, saying they had dated for about 2 months after the trip, but had already broken up.
You were super busy with work, Abigail. Remember staying at that business hotel near your company? I just felt lonely and ended up cheating with a subordinate,
he said nonchalantly. Maybe I should have expressed my hurt more at that time. But then he said,
you know what? I prefer you, Abigail. That other woman was so demanding, always wanting jewelry or to watch romantic movies. Made me appreciate how great you are.
I was inclined to forgive him, so I never really took any action. I even decided to quit my job, thinking I had also been neglecting Stephen. But that's how it goes in marriage, right? Well, it seems Stephen didn't feel the same way. According to him, things were off since our honeymoon.
I wanted a food-centric trip, but you went ahead and chose a sightseeing itinerary. Sightseeing only makes you hungry, and the food was just average. I knew then you weren't considering my feelings, he said.
Really? You felt this way for 40 years? Who was it that seemed to enjoy all that sightseeing on our honeymoon? You were the one who signed us up for a late-night optional tour, leaving me alone at the hotel, jet-lagged.
Jet lag is all in the mind. If you were really looking forward to the honeymoon, you could have slept on the plane,
he retorted. That's just ridiculous. Stephen's always been selfish, but I never realized how bad it was.
Look, I'll give you a month to pack up and leave,
he said before heading to his room, and there I was, setting up a special dinner table with a high-end steak and wine and cake from a famous pastry chef. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. The next day, I confronted Stephen to ask why he was considering divorce. Then Stephen said,
I needed you when I was working. But now that I'm retired, a housekeeper can easily replace you,"
he replied, cold as ice. Well, since then, he's barely interacted with me. He doesn't eat the meals I prepare or put out his laundry. When I ask him how he's managing, he said he's dining out and using laundromats.
"Even if you leave, I can manage on my own," he claimed.
So that's it. I was nothing more than a stand-in housekeeper while he was working. I decided to consult our children about it. We have a 39-year-old son and a 37-year-old daughter, both married and living nearby. Since they were both married and lived in neighboring cities, I called them to a coffee shop and told them I was planning to divorce Stephen. When I told them, my son Kevin immediately said,
"Well, it's about time, isn't it? But when did you find out?"
"Find out what?" I could see the shock on Kevin's face mirroring my own.
"What? You didn't know? Dad's cheating with a younger woman."
According to Kevin, while he was walking through a bustling downtown area for work, he spotted Stephen and a younger woman heading towards a hotel. Caught off guard, I asked him about it.
"It's just for fun, and Mom knows."
Stephen apparently justified himself.
"Look, when I was 20, Dad cheated with someone from his office, remember? Mom was cool about it then, so I figured it was the same this time."
I couldn't believe Stephen was cheating again, and lying about it too. Just then, my daughter immediately suggested hiring a private investigator to look into Stephen's actions. Right, no time to be shocked. I'm going to find out everything. After a week of investigation, it turned out that Stephen's affair was with the receptionist at his office, and he was giving her a monthly allowance. When I listened to a recorded conversation captured by the investigator at a cafe, they were discussing a sum of around $1,000 per month, and the woman was asking for more. Stephen's response?
"I'll be divorcing my wife soon, so let's get married. I'll give you a generous allowance."
So that was the plan, to kick me out. Kevin and the kids suggested that I talk to this woman, but I want to give Stephen and her a real shocker. I scoured the internet and consulted with a lawyer friend to find the most impactful approach. A few days later, I called Stephen into the living room. "I'll agree to a divorce, but not until we settle on alimony and asset division," I began. Stephen eagerly responded,
"Half the money in each of our accounts and half the value of this house and land after the mortgage is paid off. That's fair, right?"
"That's asset division. Let's discuss alimony first. I want $50,000.
"Why should I pay anything? Divorces aren't uncommon for people our age,"
he scoffed. That's when I showed him a few pictures of him in the act. "Now you understand why you have to pay alimony." I said all that, and Stephen looked stunned. "So, I also overheard your conversations with her. You've been giving her a $1,000 allowance every month. You plan to celebrate your 3-year affair and upcoming wedding with a trip, huh? That means you've been handing her $1,000 a month for 3 years. That money should have been part of our shared assets. I'll be including it in the division of property." That's not all. Stephen had been receiving his credit card statements by mail and left them unopened. I gathered them all and checked the contents. Just the bills I found totaled over $20,000. Hotel stays in Los Angeles, luxury brand shopping popular among women. All suspicious charges. I'll include that too. Oh, I also found a lease for an apartment dating back 3 years. You're the one renting it, but my investigator found out your mistress is the one living there. That rent will also be included in our shared assets. At this point, Stephen went pale. Of course he would. We're talking about nearly $100,000 here. I later found out that Stephen only had about $50,000 in his account at the time. He thought he'd just have to pay me $25,000, but he's actually looking at a $150,000 total, meaning he owes me about $75,000.
"How much do you have in your account? I'm entitled to half of that,"
Stephen blurted out in desperation. I showed him my balance. About $70,000, so Stephen's share is $35,000. That means he'd still have to pay me $40,000. When I mentioned the house and land are also part of the assets, he freaked out.
The house and land are under my name. They aren't shared property,
he shouted. Too bad. The law says otherwise. Just to add one more thing, all the house repairs came out of my account. We've had to repair the house several times since we bought it used, remember? That adds up to around $50,000, so you owe me half of that too. Even if we sell the house and split the proceeds, Stephen shouldn't go into the negative. But thinking he would get all the money, he was really down. I couldn't help but laugh. Tough luck. Here's the divorce paperwork. I handed Stephen the divorce papers and saw a faint smile on his face, which I ignored. Will you fill it out now? I'm planning to submit it shortly. After I urged him, Stephen signed the papers on the spot. I immediately took them to the courthouse. I came back 30 minutes later to find Stephen sitting smugly on the sofa, thinking it was all settled. That's when I dropped one last bomb on him. About your retirement fund. Stephen looked smug.
Too bad. I won't receive it for another 3 or 4 months. We'll be divorced by then, so it's not part of our shared assets.
Just as I thought he'd say. I feigned surprise. What? That's terrible. How much are you getting? When I asked.
$120,000. Pretty awesome, right?
He looked proud. Well, that's average for a small business, so I'll get $60,000 of that then.
Huh? Didn't I just say the money actually comes in after the divorce?
Yeah, sorry to burst your bubble, but even after divorce, your severance pay is subject to property division. I looked it up online. There was a court case that decided retirement funds are up for grabs if a couple divorced within 5 years before retirement. So, unless you sell this house and land, you're going in the hole. And even if you do sell, I doubt it'll be enough to keep your affair partner satisfied for life. At this point, Stephen was speechless, his eyes widened and his mouth trembling. Poor guy. For reference, our house is valued at about $300,000. If we sell, we each stand to make around $150,000. However, Stephen's affair partner insisted on not selling, so begrudgingly I had to pay out $150,000. Add that to the $50,000 for the divorce settlement, Stephen ended up in debt for $200,000. His affair partner, who's still in her 30s, latched onto a senior like Stephen for that house. Even though it's old, it's a conveniently located single-family home in the city. Soon after remarrying Stephen, she moved her parents into that house with all of their belongings, no questions asked. So, instead of a leisurely life funded by his pension and property split, he has to support his young new wife and her parents and also pay off debt. In the end, it seems he had no choice but to get a new job. Looks like he's forced to look for another job even after 65. His expected annual income? Maybe around $30,000. And since I claimed a $20,000 compensation in the divorce from that woman, their marriage is a mess now. I guess it's only a matter of time before she takes over the house. Speaking of which, the rental apartment Stephen contracted for her is another headache. Since he wasn't the one living there, it's a breach of contract. I tipped off the management, so now he also has to pay a fine. Just can't help but feel sorry for him. As for me, I've rented an apartment near my daughter's house and work a part-time job 3 days a week at a supermarket that hired me at 65. My granddaughter just started middle school and is going through her rebellious phase, but she feels bad for her divorced grandma and often comes to visit. I may have lost a husband, but I've gained more joyful times with my granddaughter. Right now, I'm pretty happy.